Okay, so the meeting's been recorded, so you've got the option to watch it back at a later date. If you've got any questions as we go along, just please feel free to type them, and I'll answer them as we go. So the idea of this session is just to go through the assignment and just to give you a few sort of pointers in terms of things that I'm looking for and places to look for sort of additional information to help you produce the assignment. So I've got up on the screen the assignment that you're going to be doing. Now, the first task is a scenario-based question. Now, crucially, for this question, I'm not really all that interested in the specifics of the scenario, so you don't need to worry too much about the backstory of this hotel that we're talking about. The crucial part is that you address the question that is laid out for you in question 1. So the first question relates specifically to the 7 tasks there that are to do with sort of managing an enterprise and specifically looking at sustainable development. Now, there's a really simple formula that you can follow in order to address these particular tasks. So what I'm looking for in each case is a very brief definition of what it means, and then what you would need to do in order to address that in the scenario of a hotel complex, given the elements that are provided for you in the question. So crucial information that we have in the question is that we have specific stakeholders that we can see. So we'll come on to that in a moment. And then we've got information about the way the business functions. So 60% year-round average bookings, and then local customers providing additional support for restaurant and other facilities. And then we've got some information about the other facilities itself, and then the extensive grounds. So we need to factor those in and take those into account when we are answering and addressing the key points here. So, for example, performing a stakeholder analysis. So who are the stakeholders, and crucially, what are their interests in our hotel? So we can see there by looking at the scenario that our stakeholders are 2 owners, so they're going to have obviously a significant interest. An accountant, so all they're going to primarily be interested in is that whatever we choose to do is financially viable and makes sense. We have employee representatives, so they're going to be interested in ensuring that the employees' interests are taken into account. And then representatives of local businesses, so they're going to be interested in what we can do to help make our enterprise, if you like, as attractive to them. And then we've got two other shareholders we don't really have much information on. So, what are the stakeholders? What are their perspectives? Okay, so we've got to think about how you would carry out this and what we might find, but you don't actually have to carry it out in terms of producing the report. So, for example, formulating a sustainable development policy. Now, I'm not going to expect you to necessarily develop a detailed policy, but what we'd be interested in is what kinds of things would we need to include in a sustainable development policy, particularly within this context. Looking at an implementation plan, what would you contain within the implementation plan and how would you carry it out? Looking at developing a supportive corporate culture. Well, what do we mean by a supportive corporate culture? How do we develop corporate cultures, and specifically, how do we link corporate culture to sustainability? Looking at measures and standards of performance, how can we measure our hopefully increasing sustainable credentials? Preparing relevant reports. What kind of reports might be needed, particularly in relation to the sustainability aspect, to show that we are making the right kinds of moves? And looking at our internal monitoring processes. So what kinds of internal monitoring processes do we need to think about in relation to sustainability? Now, I know that points 1 and 2 have got quite a lot of information included within the materials themselves, and you sort of left a little bit to your own devices to look at points 3 to 7. But what I'm really interested in here is that you look at the kinds of activities that are going to be needed in order to address these from the perspective of sustainability, and that we use supporting literature to help ensure that what we do is not just simply your own ideas. So, for example, formulating a sustainable development policy. You're going to find plenty of articles out there that actually, define what we mean by sustainable development policy, and perhaps look at the kinds of things that need to be included within it. Now, if you can find a few different sources of information, maybe they show the same thing, maybe they include different aspects. What that will allow you to do is to really demonstrate that you've looked at a variety of different viewpoints in each case. Now, some of these points are going to be more detailed and well developed compared to others. So, for example, preparing relevant reports, you may just be stating what sort of reports you're going to prepare, what's going to be within them, and how that links to sustainability, along with perhaps a couple of references. Other areas are going to be a little bit more detailed, such as developing a supportive culture and looking at implementation plans. Now, I'm very loath to say that you should split this up along the lines of the word allocation. So, for example, task 1 carries 70% of the marks for this particular assignment, and there are 7 stages that you're going to be talking about, and therefore it would be easy to say, well, why not just allocate 10% of my words to each of those, which would give you, somewhere in the region of about 300 words to play with for each one. Well, some of them may take slightly less than 300, some of them are going to take slightly more than 300. So really look at which of these areas is going to need the most detail. And remember to, whilst we do have a context that I want you to try and apply it to, don't be too slavish about the backstory. Don't waste words messing around with the backstory for your hotel. Okay, your hotel is what your hotel is. It is where it is. And then you need to get on with how you can develop your business by undertaking each of these 7 aspects. Now, obviously, things like measures and standards of performance, supportive corporate cultures, implementation plans, they do need to be linked to this idea that you're trying to grow and develop a hotel complex. So I don't necessarily want to see implementation plans talked about in relation to sustainable energy development, for example. That's not going to be as relevant to the assignment that you're looking at. So try and keep it specific, but crucially, you're going to need to do some background work to find out the sorts of things that so looking at point 4 there, what does a supportive culture mean, and how do we develop a supportive corporate culture, and how do sustainability goals impact upon a supportive corporate culture? What measures and standards of performance would we expect for a sustainable business, one that is engaged in sustainability practice? And perhaps what reports might we need to do? So you need to do some background work around those areas. So this assessment is actually testing your ability to undertake a degree of research by yourself as well. Now, as we move into question 2 is perhaps a little bit more straightforward. So this is looking at the payments for environmental services scheme. And you're going to look at a short essay, so carrying about 30% of the marks, so no more than sort of 900 to 1,000 words. That should be ample wordage in order to enable you to undertake the work that you need to undertake. And within that, then, you're going to be looking at the advantages and limitations, so advantages and disadvantages, and then the challenges and opportunities that you could have in terms of using PES. So it's almost like a SWOT analysis. So you're looking at the sort of strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats in terms of using this approach. Now, just as a sort of very, very quick start point, just to give you a little bit of advice, I'm just going to share my screen with you here. So if you just bear with me for a moment.